Welcome to the party, pals. Right off the bat, the information provided in this video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Always consult with a qualified legal professional for advice tailored to your specific situation. And just a reminder, we do have our live streams every Thursday at 6 p.m. Central. It's an open stage with great discussions. It's really interactive, and we hope to see you guys there. But today we're starting a two-part series on a topic that can feel incredibly complex, especially if you're running a small business right here in the United States. We're talking about GDPR, a popular regulation out of Europe. In this first video, we're going to cut through the confusion and lay out exactly what GDPR is, why it could directly impact your US-based business, even if you don't have an office in Europe, and some of the core concepts to grasp. It's an important subject and honestly one that trips up a surprising number of businesses outside of Europe. Data privacy regulations are constantly evolving, and GDPR is really seen as a global benchmark now. It's influencing laws all over the place. So our goal here today in part one is to unpack these initial complexities and make them more understandable. We'll cover what GDPR is and its core purpose, the million-dollar question: does it really affect your US small business? We'll look at its scope, the potential impact if it does apply, and why you can't ignore it. And finally, a brief look at the core principles that underpin GDPR. Are you guys ready? Let's try and cut through that initial regulatory fog. What is GDPR? All right, so first things first, for anyone who maybe heard of the acronym GDPR floating around, but isn't totally sure what it is exactly. Well, GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulation. It's a pretty comprehensive data privacy and security law that was passed by the EU. It was formally adopted way back in April of 2016, which gave everyone a couple of years to get ready. Then it became fully enforceable across all of the EU member states starting in May of 2018. So it's not exactly brand new. It's been the standard over there for quite a while now. Its core purpose was pretty revolutionary, actually. It's really about giving individuals living in the EU much greater control over their personal data. Before GDPR, data protection laws varied quite a bit between different EU countries. It was really quite patchwork, making things very tricky. So one of the main goals of GDPR was to simplify things for businesses by creating a single unified set of rules across the entire EU. And as I mentioned, it's really seen as a global benchmark now, influencing data privacy laws worldwide. So let's talk a little bit about the GDPR scope now. Okay, unifying it makes sense from their perspective, but here's the million-dollar question, right? Why does a US business owner need to worry? Maybe you're running a small online shop in Oregon or a little consulting firm down in Florida. Why does a European regulation even matter to you? For US small and medium businesses, dealing with GDPR compliance can be tricky and puzzling, and they might not even realize that they're at risk of breaking the rules. GDPR protects natural persons, real people, no matter where they're from or live, when their personal data is processed under certain circumstances. The main thing to consider, according to Article 3, Paragraph 2 of the regulation, is whether the person whose data you're using is actually in the EU when you're processing their data. This usually happens when you're offering goods or services to them. This applies even if goods or services are free. So let's take that online shop in Oregon we talked about. If you ship orders to customers in France or Germany, boom, you're offering goods to individuals in the EU. When a customer in Berlin visits your website and places an order, you're processing their data while they are physically in the EU. GDPR likely applies to that transaction data. Another common example is software as a service, a SaaS product that's accessible to and used by people in the EU. Monitoring their behavior is another one. So if your website uses cookies or tracking scripts, and let's be honest, most websites do that for things like analytics, and you're using those to understand how visitors move around your site, what they click on, maybe where they came from, then you're monitoring their behavior. If those individuals are visiting your site from the EU, then you're monitoring the behavior of the people in the EU. This applies even if you don't sell anything to them directly and they're just browsing. Let that sink in for a moment. It's not about where your business is legally registered or where your web servers physically sit. The game changer with GDPR is that it follows the person. It's all about where that individual is located in the EU when you're interacting with their data. Any online presence that's accessible to and interacts with individuals who are in the EU when that interaction happens potentially falls under GDPR scope. It's definitely not just about having an office in Paris. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the impact and why you can't ignore it. Okay, that definitely casts a much wider net than you think most small businesses initially realize. So what happens if you fall under GDPR and don't comply? Well, ignoring it is really not a viable strategy. The potential administrative fines can be substantial. We're talking up to 20 million, that's euros, or 4% of a company's total worldwide annual revenue from the previous financial year, whichever amount is higher. These numbers are designed to be a real deterrent, clearly. And these aren't just theoretical threats. We've seen some pretty hefty examples. Google got hit with a 90 million fine by the French regulator because YouTube users couldn't refuse cookies as easy as they could accept them. The takeaway, making it difficult to opt out, is seen as unfairly nudging users towards consent. H&M, the clothing retailer, was fined 35 million in Germany. Sure, part of it was basic security slip-up, but the bigger issue was that they were collecting extensive private details about employees, things like health info and religious beliefs, sometimes just from informal chats. And then they were using this to build profiles for employment decisions. This massively violated core principles like purpose limitation and fairness. Now, while these are big companies, the underlying regulation still applies to smaller businesses. If you meet that criteria of interacting with people in the EU, and beyond the fines, there are also very real risks of reputational damage and losing customer trust. The clear message from all of this, ignoring GDPR is just not a good idea. The potential fines, legal costs, and the hit to your reputation are simply too significant. It sounds daunting, I know, but the good news is there are practical steps you can take. We'll dive deep into how to tackle compliance and avoid the pitfalls in part 2 of this series. For today, though, we're really grasping this why it matters and why you can't ignore it is the crucial first step. So to round out the first video, let's briefly touch on the heart of GDPR, the principles that really dictate how data should be handled. Article 5 lays out 7 key principles. Think of these as the bedrock, the absolute foundation of responsible data handling. Now, we're going to give these a much closer look and see how they translate into action in part 2. But for now, just to give you a taste, here are 7 core ideas you'll hear a lot about. Number 1, lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. Basically, process data legally, fairly, and be open about it. Number 2, purpose limitation. Collect data for specific stated reasons and don't use it for other incompatible things later. Number 3, data minimization. Only collect the data you absolutely need. Less is more. And number 4, accuracy. Keep the data accurate and up to date. Number 5, storage limitations. Don't keep data forever. Have limits. Number 6, data integrity and confidentiality. Security. Protect the data. Number 7, accountability. This is a big one. You're responsible for and must be able to show you're complying. These principles guide everything else in GDPR. So to quickly recap part 1, GDPR is the EU's comprehensive data protection law, giving significant rights to individuals in the EU over their personal data. For US businesses, it can apply to you even if you don't have an office in Europe, if you offer goods or services to people in the EU, or monitor their online behavior while they're in the EU. The potential penalties for noncompliance are serious, making it something you really can't afford to ignore. And it's all built on those 7 core principles of responsible data handling. I hope this has given you a clearer understanding of what GDPR is all about and whether it may apply to your business. Now you might be thinking, okay, I get it. It might apply to me, so what do I actually do about it? That's where the rubber meets the road, and it's exactly what part 2 is all about. We'll roll up our sleeves and walk through a clear, practical 12-step compliance path designed specifically to help US small and medium-sized businesses like yours get a handle on this. We're talking concrete actions from data audits and beefing up your privacy policies to managing how you handle customer rights and vendor agreements, plus a whole lot more. So make sure you check that out. If this introduction to GDPR has been helpful, and this is the kind of in-depth exploration of complex GRC topics is your vibe, we'd love it if you'd consider liking this video and subscribing to the Study GRC channel. It really helps spread the word and refine your feed. And please share your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. in the comments below. What was your biggest key takeaway from this part 1? Do you have any initial questions about GDPR, the scope or purpose? Your feedback helps us shape future content. And don't forget our live sessions Thursdays at 6 p.m. Central, live right here on YouTube. It's an open discussion, so bring your questions, and it's a great community. Thanks for watching part 1. We'll see you in part 2 for the practical steps to compliance. GRC Mafia.